Do you want to say hello? Wee! Say hi. She hates this. Hey friends, it's Gabby. Welcome to the Book Bags. So, I don't know about anyone else, but August has been kind of crazy for me. I went with Grace and Jack to meet Karen and McManus. I got food poisoning on the way back from meeting Karen and McManus. Baldur's Gate 3 came out. If you haven't played that game and you enjoy Dungeons and Dragons and anything like that, highly recommend. Jack and I can't get off of it. It's amazing. And I have read approximately one book this month.
Are you not embarrassed? This is really embarrassing.
So today I decided to share with you guys 8 books that you may never have heard of. And hopefully throughout this, you'll be able to find your next underappreciated, in my opinion, read. So this first book that I'm going to talk about, you may have seen if you follow Fairy Loot, because this was actually in their December 2022 box. It's a debut. It was blurbed by Stephanie Garber, and it has been recognized a little bit, obviously, because it's gotten some love from Fairy Loot, but people don't really talk about it. So I wanted to talk about Cruel Illusions by Margie Fuston. I read this book in January, pretty much right after I got it. I was super intrigued by the premise, and the premise follows a teenager, I believe 18 years old. Her name is Ava, and her mother was murdered by a vampire when she was young. So she's in foster care, and she kind of hates her life, and she's always wanted to get revenge. One day, she comes across a magic show and decides, why not? I guess I'll go in. And she meets these vampire slayers. They're magicians. They're looking for a new member in their troupe, and they're looking to take her and bring her into this secret society for killing vampires. And so she thinks this is absolutely perfect. She is so excited. She hops on this immediately. So Ava starts experiencing this hidden society. She starts falling in love and figuring out that maybe this isn't everything that it's cracked up to be. And I won't say more than that, but if you like vampires, I highly recommend giving this a read. If you like magic, cool magic systems, if you like the circus vibes, I think you'll really enjoy this. The blurb says Caraval meets Buffy the Vampire Slayer. The vampire aspect is really cool and really unique, I think. It's something that I definitely haven't seen before. If you like any of Stephanie Garber's books, like I said, Cruel Illusions. Can you not show your butt to the entire camera, please? That's really rude. If you've seen our videos before, chances are you're going to recognize this next book, and I decided to mention it here because, again, it doesn't get a lot of love. It's still pretty new, and I feel like nobody talks about it, especially on BookTube, so again, I wanted to mention it. And that is Silver in the Bone by Alexandra Bracken. Alexandra Bracken is literally my favorite author of all time, if you can tell by the copies of Lore on my shelf, Passenger, which I still need to read, and I have literally, this is the Fairy Loot edition. I also have the Owl Crate edition and the original, like, the basic hardcover on my shelf. It's a healthy obsession, I swear. It's based off of Arthurian legend, and this is the first in a duology, and it leaves off on a killer cliffhanger. This book follows Tamsin Lark, who is a hollower, which is basically a treasure hunter, and she's out to find something that she believes is going to break her brother's curse. There's a lot more to Avalon than she thinks there is, and they really need her and her team's help, and someone on that team also happens to be her biggest rival. So for anyone that loves retellings, adaptations, legends, highly recommend this one. The next book I have is another adaptation, although it's less fantasy and more historical, and this is The Shadow of Perseus by Claire Haywood. I have tabbed a little bit of this. The Shadow of Perseus, as it sounds, is a retelling of the myth of Perseus, and something to keep in mind is that there is no magic in this. I was expecting this to be like a magical retelling, but this is very realistic. So just something to keep in mind. But this retelling tells not just Perseus's story, but it tells his mother Danae's story, Medusa's story, and his wife Andromeda's story. Some of the three most important women in his life. A very intense read. It's really good, but I felt really bad after I read this. I had to just be with my thoughts for a bit. It was an intense book for sure. But if you like Greek mythology, if you like the story of Medusa, I highly recommend giving this one a try. It's very different from other ones that I've read, especially like Madeline Miller's, because there's a lot of magic in those, and this is like, it basically shows how people in ancient Greece could have seen certain things and spiraled those into myth. How Zeus rained down on Danae in a shower of gold. That is rationalized here. Please check the trigger warnings though, just to make sure, but highly recommend. The next one I'm going to recommend is something for my gamers. If you've been playing Baldur's Gate, if you happen to like Critical Role, or just Dungeons and Dragons in general, and fantasy for sure, then my next recommendation is Critical Role's Kith and Kin. If anyone is familiar with Critical Role and you haven't read this book yet, I highly recommend picking up the audiobook because the whole cast voices it. It's narrated by Robbie Daymond. It's overall just an amazing story about these twins, Vex and Vax, as they grow up trying to get their father's approval, who is a very snobby, terrible dude, and they try to get over the grief of losing their mom, being on their own. Vex and Vax have always been together. They're not used to being heroes by any stretch, and when they get tied up with the Thieves Guild, they realize that things are a little bit more complicated than they seem, and for once in their life, the twins are on opposite sides. This is a dual point of view story. Shadow of Perseus was also a dual point of view. Through Danae, Medusa, and Andromeda's perspectives, you got to see all of those. But this is in the perspectives of Vex and Vax, both of the twins, as they're on opposite sides of this very intense conflict, and it's about them learning how to handle their difference of opinions with each other for the first time. If you love queer representation, you'll enjoy this book. Vax is bisexual. He has a male love interest. There is a little bit of non-binary representation. Honestly, I even recommend it to anyone who doesn't know anything about D&D or Critical Role because it's just an overall good read and you don't have to know anything about it. The next book I would like to talk about, again, is kind of tied to video games. However, it serves as a prequel to get into the series, so you actually don't have to know anything about the games or the world building or anything like that. Kind of the same thing as Kith and Kin. And this is from the Dragon Age series, The Stolen Throne by David Gator. This actually came out, I think, like 6 months before the actual game did, Dragon Age Origins, in 2009. So this served to drum up a lot of hype for the game. The games are amazing, but specifically talking about this book, this is also dual point of view. It takes place in the perspective of Prince, or I guess King in this case, King Merrick and Loghain. Merrick lived his entire childhood as a prince, basically in rebellion. This country called Orlais has usurped their throne and stuck some random, lazy, stupid emperor guy on there. But they've got a really good army, so it's kind of hard to take them out. His mother, the rebel queen, and his grandfather, the rebel king before, have all pretty much died to this war. It's been a very long fight. And now it falls on Merrick to continue their rebellion and try and take back their throne. As they go along, he meets this guy named Loghain, and Loghain is stubborn. He doesn't really like people, and he considers himself a little bit more rational. He's kind of sly. He would prefer to get out of doing things rather than to face things head on, which is kind of what Merrick is about. Loghain is kind of the tactician amongst the two of them, and they become really good friends, and they have to try and take back their throne and take back the country of Ferelden. If you want a very fun read with awesome dialogue, great characters, and just an overall great time, make sure you check the trigger warnings. This series overall, it just deserves so much love. These books are incredible. This next one is another one that I have talked about on this channel quite a bit, and that is Ace is Wild by Amanda Dewitt. It's so great to see asexual representation, specifically good ace representation in novels, because we don't really get it anywhere else. And this isn't a romance. This is As It Kind of Looks. These 5 teenagers going on a heist to try and take down one of the big, moguls on the strip. The humor here is really great. The narrative voice is so captivating. There are so many points where I just cackled. Ace is Wild is just a really solid story. It's a debut novel, so there are a few cliches and a few things that could have been done better, but I still gave it 5 stars because for me, I didn't find that those ruined the enjoyment of the book. If it had, I probably would have knocked it down to 4 stars, but this just was overall a really fun read. So if you like heists, if you like teenagers being teens, there's a little bit of side plot romance to it. If you like good narration, I highly recommend. The next one I'm going to talk about is another romance, and it is Once Upon a K-Prom by Kat Cho. I honestly don't read a lot of romances, and this one is one that I honestly thought was really cute and I enjoyed. I believe there's a book, at least Grace picked it up recently, called XOXO, I think. But if you like that sort of thing, especially with the K-pop twist, I highly recommend Once Upon a K-Prom because it's about this girl, Elena, and her best friend Robbie, who ended up going to Korea when he was a kid to basically become a K-pop star. And now he and his group have come back for a concert, have come back to shoot some promo. Elena is ecstatic to see her best friend, but things aren't the way they left them off when they were kids. They're very different. They're interested in each other as well. And Elena has a lot of problems of her own. She volunteers at the rec center, and the rec center isn't getting a lot of love and support. It really needs some TLC, and it's on the verge of shutting down, and that's when Elena devises a plot to try and get Robbie and his band to help. But of course, when they start developing feelings for each other, things stop being simple. It's a dual point of view book, and my biggest complaint is probably that Elena's perspective was in first person, and then there were a couple point of views with Robbie in it, and Robbie's was in third person, which really, it was really jarring, and it kind of affected my enjoyment of it. If you like romance, if you like K-pop, if this seems to be your jam, you'll enjoy it. Now, the last book that I'm going to talk about today is one that I don't have on me, unfortunately. I received an advanced reader copy through NetGalley for this book, so I had the ebook. And I'll probably be popping up screenshots of the quotes and things because I took so many. My phone is just full of them right now. But the last book I want to recommend is Wren Martin Ruins It All, again, by Amanda Dewitt. This is coming out November 7th, I believe. So it's coming out pretty soon, and it is Amanda Dewitt's second book. Let me just tell you, I was not expecting to fall in love with this book in the way that I did. I enjoyed Ace is Wild, especially because these people just got to be kids and do this crazy heist without really having a lot to do with romance. It didn't feel like a coming out story, and it wasn't a coming out story. But Wren Martin Ruins It All is very different from that, but in so many amazing ways, in equally amazing ways. So Wren Martin is asexual. He is the president of the student council, and he cares a lot about the future of his school. So Wren dedicates himself to trying to make things better at school, and there's a lot going on in his home life, and to top it all off, his vice president, Leo, is someone he despises. So the way that Wren decides to go about this is to cancel their school dance, the biggest event of the year, the Valentine's Day dance. It's bigger than prom, it's bigger than homecoming, bigger than pretty much anything. People love this dance, and he wants to cancel it. However, Leo decides that's a bad idea. So he instead suggests, why don't we try and get a sponsor for the dance? And he suggests this app company called Buddy. This app is about chatting anonymously with other people to get to know people for who they are inside rather than judging them by first impressions and appearances. It's not supposed to be a dating app, but it's definitely a dating app. People use it that way a lot, and that's part of why Wren literally despises it. So Wren's super against this, but Leo manages to score a deal with them. They seem interested. So Buddy ends up sponsoring their dance. Wren is able to make some well-needed changes in their school, and all the while, he's chatting with someone on Buddy who he really gets along with and realizes that the guy he hates a lot in school might not be as bad as he thought. So I don't love to read a lot of romances, but first of all, ace representation literally means the world to me, and this is not a coming out story. Wren has been out for so long. He's proud of who he is. He, in fact, doesn't like to date a lot, and so he's very resistant of everything that's going on in his life. But the stories about him learning to take risks and learning that it's okay to not be perfect, and especially because he's very far from perfect. He's incredibly flawed. And the narration, again, I mentioned this in Aces Wild, the narration it's similar to Aces Wild, but it is so good. Like, it's better than the narration in Aces Wild. Wren is not a likable character by any means, but he's a really entertaining character, and so he's a lot of fun to follow, when at first I wasn't entirely sure he was going to be super fun to follow because he's kind of a dick. It really works. It's a well-crafted book. It's so addicting, and honestly, I'm kind of sad that it's over. Like, I want more. And as soon as this book comes out, I'm putting it on my shelf. I'm getting a physical copy because Leo and Wren and Ryan and Maggie and Archer, future me, please put up the quote about Archer. You know exactly which one you're talking about. This cast is just so quirky. They're so fun. They speak and behave like real teenagers. If queer representation is something that you really love, if queer romance is something you really love, highly, highly, highly recommend getting this book on November 7th when it comes out. But this, as the only book that I read this month, I'm happy. It was just a great light read. I highly recommend any of Amanda Dewitt's stuff. She's coming out with more in the next few years. So, yeah, I think that's about all that I have for you guys today. If you enjoyed this, if you've made it this far, please leave a like and hit that subscribe button. We upload every single Friday and sometimes on Sundays for Special Sunday. Make sure you hit that notification bell and definitely leave a comment. Let me know if you've ever read any of these books, if you played Baldur's Gate. That's all I got for you guys today.